Okay, so I am going to start building the base of my table, which is going to consist of three different sections. They're all going to be the same. It's basically going to be a C shape that's made out of 2x4s laminated together to look like a 4x4. And then I'm going to have a pipe to make the fourth side of my square. And so if you don't have the same amount of tools that I do, you can make sure you buy some decent lumber that is as straight as possible and that isn't too rough. And you'll be able to do the exact same process without using like a planer or taking off the edges or anything like that. You can just glue them up, make your bases. You'll have a slight crumb catcher kind of a look in the middle, but it can definitely be done with minimal tools. I am, however, going to take off the rounded edges of my sides. I'm going to be running them through my drum sander. A hand sander would work just fine, but since I have the tools, I'm going to utilize them. So just adjust for the tools that you have, and I'll show you how I build this really simple base to my table.
1, 2, 3, come on!
Okay, so to start with the pipes, you're going to need 3 that are cut at 21 inches threaded and then 6 flanges, and you're going to screw them together, spray paint them, and that takes care of the pipes. As for the wood, you're going to want 9 2x4s, and I started by cutting them all in half to make them more manageable before I ran them through my drum sander. And then go ahead and use a hand sanitizer if you don't have a drum sander, and that will work just as well. Once they were all sanded down, I took them over to the chop saw and I cut them all into their respective lengths. Alright, so this is what I end up with after everything is cut for the 3 legs. We've got 3 pieces cut at 27 1/8 inch, another 3 pieces cut at 24 1/4 inch. We've got ourselves 6 pieces cut at 40 1/2 inches, and then we've got another 6 pieces. They are cut at 39 1/8 inches from a flat edge to the long point. And then they are cut at a 45-degree angle. So from the long point to the end there is 39 1/8 inch, and only one side is cut at the 45-degree angle. So let's start putting them together. And with that, here is a drawing of how the table legs are supposed to look. They are layered on top of each other so that the weight will be evenly distributed and pushing down. Therefore, there should be no problem as far as holding the tabletop. Okay, so you can see I pretty much laid things out the way I wanted them to be. And then I made sure things were tight and snug, and I glued, clamped, and then I pre-drilled the holes. So this is gonna be either the tabletop or it's going to be facing the ground, on the ground. So I made sure to countersink them first so that the screws wouldn't scratch the floor and it would sit level. Now I can take my clamps out and I can move on to the next piece. So I basically followed this method for all 3 legs and did them all at the same time. Just an FYI, I glued and screwed these in sections, the bottom section, the side section, and the top section. I did not screw the 3 pieces together because I wanted to run each section through the table saw. So at this point, I have got 2 of my pieces together, and you can see if you're going to laminate them together now, you're going to have this seam right here. There's also this side which won't fit through my sander. It's a little bit rougher. So basically that's why I am going to run each of my boards through my table saw to take off those rounded edges so that hopefully I get a little bit more of a seamless look. You can use just 4x4s if you don't want to go through this process, or it really isn't going to look that terrible if you want to leave that gap, that seam in the middle of your boards. I just prefer not to have that, so I'm going to run them all through the table saw. So this ended up being a little more difficult than I had thought it would be, probably because the sides of my boards weren't completely square, and so they were a little difficult to push through the saw blade. And you'll notice that I have a ton of burn marks on my pieces of wood. That is really unfortunate, and I had to sand a lot to get them out. But, you know, it is what it is. I guess I better replace my blade. But once that was done, it was time to go ahead and connect my 3 sections, and I made sure that they were square. I lined them up on the floor and used the pipe to kind of determine whether it was level or not, at which point I decided to screw from the top and the bottom of the boards into the side leg, and you'll see what I mean. And here it is, all glued and screwed together. And next comes the floating part of the table. So basically I used 2 2x2s at 8 feet long to run the stretchers of the table end to end. And then I cut the rest of the 2x2s to fit in between those stretchers. And I glued and screwed them together to create a framework for the top of the table. I did join all these pieces with pocket holes, which you could get the cheaper version of the handheld pocket hole system, which is really not expensive at all and is a great tool for simple projects like this. I basically built this so that it would lay on the inside of the legs so that it would appear when the tabletop was on that it was floating along the edges. And I also made sure to line up the 2x2s at the end of my table legs so that they were only about an inch on the table leg so that that end also appeared floating. Then I filled all the holes and cracks within the table legs, and I will spare you the amounts of sanding that I did to get those table saw blade marks out. Now that everything's ready, it's time to slap on a coat of paint.
Look a little happy though.
Yes. Me?
Yeah.
You happy about that, Mom?
Keep your shirt down. Aubrey, stop. Please, that's my eardrum. Skylar, keep your shirt down.
Wow.
I'm still recording though. Weirdo. Okay, guys.
And here it is all painted and ready to put together. I started by taking it indoors and I screwed the pipes into place. And then came the top, in which I again measured very carefully where they landed on the insides of the legs so that the tabletop would appear to be floating. I did screws on each quarter, and then I also did a few screws down the center of the board into the center leg. And I should probably also mention, since I didn't record it, that once we had the tabletop on, I went underneath the table and I screwed in 2.5-inch screws through the 2x2s into the bottom of the tabletop. I have had this design in my head for at least over a year now, and I am so happy with how it turned out. It's something a little bit different, a new experience to have a design in your head and make it happen. And I couldn't be more pleased. It is pretty awesome. It's modern, it's sleek, and it's a little bit industrial. I'm just really, really happy with it, and the floating top is it's just flipping awesome, and I'm just really excited about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully this gives you a little motivation to try something of your own. I appreciate all of your support. Please comment, like, subscribe. And until next time, we will see what's next. If you are interested in seeing how I built the tabletop, please go to my channel, subscribe, and check out the video tutorial on how I did that.